Welcome, everybody. Another new episode of Our Roots in Tea. And today we are obviously talking more about spirituality, psychology, all that good stuff that you've been listening to for quite some time now, I hope. And today I've got another good friend of mine, Tim Wardell. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me.
Cool. And so before we begin today, today's choice of tea of choice is I went to Starbucks. I got what is called the honey citrus mint tea.
Ooh.
It's actually quite interesting. They add like a splash of lemonade in there. So yeah, so it's like a little minty taste with a little bit of honey and sour. It's interesting if people want to go
Lemonade,
try
like actual lemonade, or lemonade like a soda kind of?
actual lemonade.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they mix that in there, which is I didn't know about this. So it's like maybe like a specialty tea they have. So for those who want to try out, then yes, go to Starbucks. I do
Are they
recommend.
sponsoring this episode?
No, they're not. I'm just recommending. Well, maybe, who knows? Maybe don't. We'll see what's going on. But yeah, so I do want to dive right in right away.
Well, we didn't get to my tea. I'm drinking tea too. Everyone.
You're drinking tea too. So what are you drinking today, Tim?
I'm just drinking a basic matcha green tea.
Basic matcha green tea. Oh, hey, I mean, it's cool too. Basic matcha green tea. Yeah, I mean, well, green tea is always like the standard, right? It's safe. Right. Cool. And you know what? Actually, since we, I think you and I earlier, we were just talking about this topic, about equality and all that. So, this is actually a good way to segue in right away in this. And so, because earlier I was mentioning that there was like a Tim Ferriss episode, not Tim Ferriss, it's Joe Rogan episode. I forgot who the guest was, but they're talking about how, like, with all this stuff going on, of course, a lot of people were fighting for equality and justice and all that. But they're saying that, yes, it's the right thing to do, but at the same time, it is hard to really have everyone to be equal, because when it comes down to it, there always going to be someone either smarter or more athletic or just more naturally gifted than others. So I just want to know what your point of view on this.
Well, I think when we're talking like the general sense of equality in society, I don't think people are saying I don't know. I didn't listen to that episodes. But I find it, if we're talking about social justice and just the innate equality of every human being, that they're worth something. Like everyone's worth the same. Just on a base level, everyone's has an equal worth. Take them out of our American society, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that not everyone believes that, but I think, at least this country was, quote unquote, created with that intent, with that idea that, all men are created equal.
Okay. Like each person should have like at least a baseline pay or like, have a home, some kind of.
Well, no, I'm looking at, see, that's like that's putting on a, like, I'm not even talking, I'm just talking about person to person. We're not talking about giving them anything. We're just saying we should start on the same, ideally we should all start on the same level, right?
Like now, intrinsic values.
Right. Now, realistically, we obviously don't.
Sure.
Obviously, everyone's born into, no matter what, not just in America, across the world, everyone's born into some sort of system. And I was telling you earlier when we were just talking about this, that, every society places importance in certain fields, right?
Yeah.
America has a high value for, wealth, whether or not you've earned it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as you have wealth, no matter how you've really earned it, America puts value on that.
Yeah.
Entertainers, sports, athletes, who have a really high value for them. So I don't think it's, if I'm not saying that this, just because someone wants to be in the NBA, if they're not good enough, they shouldn't be allowed to be in the NBA.
Right.
Like that's something separate that I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But should everyone have a right to pursue those things?
Yes.
And should we as a society give everyone the best opportunities
Mhm.
to at least try to even out the playing field, where
Yeah.
everyone is, more people are starting off on the same foot instead of behind a little bit or a lot?
Yeah.
Yes, I believe that we should all work towards that as a society, because only society would only get better.
Yeah. Because that comes from a lot, obviously. I mean, uh, based on what's going on now, that comes a lot from obviously the racial aspect, right? Because like what you mentioned, you should give everyone equal opportunity, but then of course, in a systematic way, we know that certain race do get a leg up ahead.
Right, of course. Yeah,
And
I mean, okay, uh, I'm just put this out there because we're on a podcast.
yeah,
I'm mixed race.
yes,
My mother is European heritage. My father is Black and Puerto Rican. Um, so obviously, I come at it from
yeah,
uh, a different point of view as a
of
mixed
course,
race person.
of course.
Um, but yeah, like this, our society was built on the systemic issues that we're dealing with today have been there since the beginning of our society, of American society. It was intrinsically built into the system that, unless you were white and male and straight, I'm also gay, by the way. So, so if you're white, male, and straight, you were at the top of that ladder,
Mhm.
and then they kind of set up the structure. If you're a white and woman, you're on the next round, rung of that ladder, and so forth and so on. And I feel like what's going on today is a renegotiation of what our system is,
Mhm.
and and I think there's at least it looks like this. Half the country is negotiating, well, we want it closer to an equal playing field.
Yeah.
And I think another part of the country or society wants it to stay the way that it has always been.
Okay. The interesting point, though, I actually also want to make. I don't know if you agree with this, but this is like more than just obviously the society and system. It feels like it's really like a deep psychological root for each person, for like whole society, that something's going on there. Like it's either like the, I don't know, this is how a friend of mine described this, as almost like the societal tree. The roots are like damaged and tainted in some sense, in a, I guess, in a very, I guess you can think of it like an inner spiritual sense or whatever, right?
Mm.
So I don't know what you think about that. If you agree with it, or it's just simply like people should just stop reading news or watching media because it's a brainwash tool, right?
Yeah, no, totally. That's the thing. It's like everything. It feels like everything's coming to a head, and there's so many parts to the problem.
Yeah.
I do agree with. I agree with the fact that we get so inundated through media about certain narratives,
Yeah.
and because of algorithms now,
Hmm.
you're thrown into one focused point of or a point of view
Hmm.
through these media platforms,
Hmm.
whether it's Instagram or Facebook
Yeah.
or
Twitter.
even cable news or
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah.
um so yeah, like the spiritual rot, I guess. It's hard to say if it wasn't always there,
Mm.
and now it's just been exaggerated.
Yeah.
Everyone's just listening to one thing and one point of view,
Mhm.
and we all have access. We
Yeah.
can, all of our points of views can be, put on the loud horn now
Yeah. Yeah.
through Twitter or whatever.
Mhm.
That wasn't the case even 30 years ago, or even freaking 15 years ago. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say if it wasn't always there or if it's just become that way in the past 20 years or so.
Mm. Okay.
But I do think it's there. I do think that we need to realign
Yeah.
somehow. That the media, there used to be like a uni media. There used to be 5 news channels or something.
Yeah.
Whatever. CBS and NBC and ABC News at night, and that was it. And everyone kind of got all their news from there. They all watched the same shows. They all pretty much watched the same media, so everyone was kind of on the same, getting the same stories and the
Mhm.
same information. So even if you disagreed
Mhm.
on the end goal, you're
Mhm.
still working with the same bit of information.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
now, yeah, now it's completely different. So I don't.
Right.
It's hard to say like how that changes. But in order to get back on some sort of realistic playing field, I feel like we have to at least agree on one thing. I'm hoping that it's government.
Mhm.
I'm just like a little, I don't know, I just consume a lot of political stuff, so
Mhm.
I can see that as a unifying, the American democracy,
Mhm.
um, pulling through, and at least we all agree that that's what we
Yeah.
want.
Mhm.
I don't know. I might be naive.
Well, then, let me ask you. Well, this is probably a very loaded question, but just from your own personal point of view, opinion, besides having the government do anything, let's say if you were to make a change, like how would you propose that we realigned? You know, whether it's we realign our system, our roots, whatever.
It's hard. I mean, it really comes for me. I think it really comes down to education.
Education. Okay.
Um, but we have 50 states with uh, 50 different approaches to even what we're teaching
Hmm.
children, what we're teaching ourselves. Like right now, I know I just read that North Carolina is deciding that they're going to kind of really focus on race and
Okay.
racial education, racial history,
Great.
and a lot of people in North Carolina are up in arms about that and kind of want to gloss over that part of American history. I just read in Utah today. In Utah, a few parents wanted to take their kids out of class because they were teaching Black History Month, and they didn't want their kids to learn about Black History Month. Uh, so again, it's so because we are the Federation of States, and each state has their own rights to do certain things, like education, and what they teach. It's really hard to all get on the same page. I think that's the awesome thing about the US is that we have 50 different ways of doing things to figure out what's the right way. I think that's led to a lot of success of America. But also it leads to division, because
Yeah.
if you're a united country who's trying to move forward
Hmm.
in a certain direction, especially now, the world's getting smaller,
Yeah.
so what one person does in Utah does affect us in California, does affect someone in Alaska, like,
Yes.
and to I don't know how we reckon with that. I don't know how we all agree that we need to unite in order to move forward, or else it's just
Yeah.
not. It's going to get worse.
Right. Absolutely. And
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if I really answered your
oh no,
question
no, no.
there,
I
but
mean, no, it was a very loaded question, obviously. And to kind of backtrack a little bit, and because since you mentioned one of the states, like they didn't even want the kids to learn, Black History Month, then do you believe that it has a lot to do with the fact, like, who's running the show on the top pyramid, right? Because it almost feels like that even now in 2021, at the top is still not very diverse. You still have people
Yeah.
coming from that generation of very narrow-mindedness, right?
Yeah. I think there is a big generational gap
Sure.
of of uh, of I don't know, awareness or worldview.
Okay.
I think, if you get, I guess, quote unquote, the millennial
Mhm.
generation,
Yeah.
someone 40 or younger, I guess, people our age tend to view the world in a more global point of view
Okay.
and have this underlying realization that we are all connected
Yeah.
on some way.
Mhm.
And then the older generation, it was a completely different world.
Mm.
They spent most of their adult lives without the internet.
Yes.
So I don't think we've truly understand how much the internet has changed us as like our psychology and
Mhm.
and so the people running at the top of the billet,
Yeah.
people running the show right now are still that older generation.
Mm.
And I think I'm hopeful I'm seeing change, like seeing this, um the perception changing, and understanding that a lot of Biden's, his international affairs right now,
Yeah.
the point of view this administration is taking is that in order for us to be strong internationally, we have to be strong domestically. And so that message, I see that there is this connect of we are all connected,
Yeah.
and we can't be telling the rest of the world you should be living up to these standards if we're not
Mm.
living up to them ourselves. And that's truly what has made America great, is our diversity.
Yeah.
um, Diversity of ideas, the freedom of ideas. Now, I know a lot of people who are on the other side of the spectrum of me would say, well, I feel like my conservative ideas are being attacked.
Mhm.
I guess I would argue that if you have an extreme, I guess in my point of view would be an extreme point of view, that's not, it's not really unifying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
I think that, I don't know, there just needs to be a reckoning of this is what's happened in the past.
Mhm.
You know, slavery did happen.
Yes.
The country was built, um, on this foundation of racism,
Mhm.
of sexism, of homophobia.
Yes.
You can't just
Yeah.
wave a wand and it's gone. You can't just pass one bill that changes some of the system without realizing that, because we spent the past over 200 years ingraining these isms into our society, they're not just going to disappear
Yeah.
by one piece of legislation. It's going to take a long time for it to get out of our psyches.
Well, I mean, that's why in education, like there are a lot of like maybe historical events or history that they gloss over, right? Because that's their way of well, the word that people always say suppress, either suppress or denying, basically, even though it's there, which is the very alarming, the alarming thing. Um, and and I completely agree with you on your point. And it almost still feels like now, I think, especially with the pandemic, you it's funny. It's weird. I don't know what you think about this, but I always thought that with the pandemic, most people would kind of change a little bit and grow personally, and then start to unify, obviously, with people. But there's still like a whole maybe even half the American population, right? Because they voted for Trump. I feel like more than half of them were, or a lot, are still kind of the same as they were even before the pandemic. So it's almost like there wasn't any really true growth, like in that one whole year. And then I have a big problem with that myself, just because like it's like something's up with you if you
Mm,
can't take that year period seriously, you know?
mm, mm.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, what do you think that is? I totally agree with you. I feel like I'm wondering if January 6th, the Capitol
oh,
insurrection,
yeah.
started to change that. The conservative people that I've seen, that I know, uh, it seems like they're starting to back away a little bit now from Trump or Trumpism, because that was such an extreme moment. But I agree, before that,
Yeah.
everyone was just digging themselves in the trenches on their sides. And so, yeah, why do you think something like this pandemic that has changed everything didn't change their minds?
Yeah, I don't, honestly, I don't know. I mean, I don't, I haven't done enough research about this. I don't have like, really vast knowledge of, obviously the political aspect, and but just in maybe like a personal spiritual growth part. I mean, I just feel like a lot of people, maybe they already have their mind made up in one way, and so no matter what happens or what you do or what you try to convince them, they're not going to change their minds. The reason why I say that is because I say this from an Asian American standpoint, because when the COVID happened, of course, you got Trump and people keep saying like the Chinese flu or virus, which is totally messed up. We know that.
Exactly.
And obviously myself, I'm Chinese too, and I'm Asian American. So in my standpoint, you have people agreeing with that, and just agreeing with it is already a huge problem. Like, why are you even going to agree with that idea? That's the thing I still can't explain. I don't even know how to explain it. It's almost like a lot of people are just kind of really like that when they're born, and then that's kind of what maybe the ideologies are instilled in that to them, that is their natural ability to blame other people, I guess, when something.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I think, obviously, I'm not. I don't know much about um, brain and whether or not you're born conservative or more
Right.
liberal. I have read a few things where they've done research where there's a certain part of the brain that if it's a bit smaller, I think it's like the empathetic part of the brain, where if it's a bit smaller, those people tend to be conservative, more
Mm,
leaning conservative. If that part of the brain's a little bit larger, they tend to lean more liberal. I
mm,
have no idea if
okay.
that's true or what, but I do know people can change.
Sure.
And uh, speaking from, like I said, I'm mixed race and I'm gay. There have been both sides. I'm from the middle of the country as well. Um, and in a rural, like West Virginia, southwestern PA, is where my family lives. Now, both sides of my family, the Black Latino side of my family, mostly Black. Uh, I don't know the Latino side of my family. So the Black side of my family is prejudiced. There are some members in that family that are prejudiced against white people, and and I've had lots of conversations with them,
Sure.
and it's because of the way they've been treated by white people
Sure.
their
Yeah.
entire lives. So
Well, yeah.
and then there's white people, and there's the white people on my side of this family, the white side of the family, that are racist or just straight up racist.
Yeah.
But I have seen the more racist people on my white side of my family change through conversations that I've had with them, and just me being me, just being mixed
Mm,
race,
mm,
me being a presence in their life, and political conversations as well. I've people that I'm very close to in my family that were conservative. I've
yeah.
seen through conversations with them
Yeah.
start leaning more closer to where they're more independent now.
Yeah.
Um, and so so you were saying that you don't know if they were born or not. I don't know if you're born with it. I do know that most people can change, and what you get in who you get in contact with, what you're exposed to. And I think going back to the media, what's happened with getting back to Corona in this past year, I think that's just proof of half of this country is taking and then is exposed. They're being exposed to one narrative, and the other, a little over half,
Yeah.
the liberal side, is getting exposed to another narrative, which in all accounts, is the truth for the most part. So I think that's kind of what happened, in my opinion, is that we spent a year, half the country was being told, don't wear a mask. It's this Chinese flu. We should blame China.
Yeah.
Which then Asian Americans started getting attacked more because of that.
Yeah.
And I think leading into this year, it was already at a boiling point, and we were already so divided.
Yeah.
And the structures, there was nothing really, to bring us together, even in a huge pandemic that should have brought us together.
It doesn't help, like we said, that half the population's feeding, like, reading different news compared to the other half, and I can probably say that maybe a good portion of the population, maybe they're not willing to change, even though you did mention that yes, people can change, but it's the same idea of, like, if someone doesn't want to be helped, they won't accept help. It's just that simple, right? And
well, if you think you're right, like, if you think you're right, then there's no reason to be helped,
Yeah, well, I mean, in their mind, and so that's the dangerous part, right? Because, like, they think they're right, but that's all in their own mind, and I think it's always good to look at different perspective first and evaluate, and then you can judge yourself and be like, okay, this makes sense, this doesn't.
Yeah.
And you try to marry the two, like, or different perspectives, like, together. At least that's how I would approach it, but it seems like a lot of people aren't they're not gonna deal with that, because maybe that's just too much work. It's just too much.
Or you haven't been taught to do that. I think there are some people that maybe are just naturally inclined to look at both sides of an argument or whatever, but I think most people have to be taught, like, this is critical thinking. This is how it works.
You
look at the broader picture, and you kind of, but then there's these structures that come in, right? So systemic racism. If you're a white person and you've been told subconsciously or explicitly or implicitly that you are better, your point of view of the world is better, when all of a sudden, in your point of view, all of a sudden you wake up, and then the culture that was telling you that white culture is the best is all of a sudden going, oh, wait a minute, there's some issues there with white culture, and it's really bad, and we need to change it. And then the points of view and the voices that were suppressed for your entire life are now being elevated, and Black and people of color, people in the LGBT community are now being elevated and listened to. That's an affront, because you've spent your whole identity is wrapped up in this, like, you might not consciously say this, but I think that's what it is it's like, my point of view is right, white America is right, and then seemingly to you, all of a sudden it's changing. And I think that's why people, when you attack, like this attack on American history that's going on right now, what we're talking about in education. To some people, their whole identity is wrapped up in America, and what they've been told America was. And so when you attack that idea, it seems like it's attacking you personally, if you're that person. That's what I'm imagining is what's happening.
No, that makes sense.
And so you take it personally. Like, what do you mean America isn't the greatest? What do you mean there's problems here? Because to them, they're just going, that's me personally. You know,
Yeah.
you're telling me that I have some issues, which, yes, I
You do.
am. I'm saying we all do, because
Yes.
we all grew up in this
Yeah.
society and culture. We all have some work to do. Me
Yes.
as a mixed race, this past year was really good for me, is regarding self-reflection
Mm-hmm.
and my identity as a mixed race person. I'm much lighter skinned than most of my
Yeah.
black side of my family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can easily code switch, and I have been my entire life. And I grew up in the mountains of southwestern PA, West Virginia, which is predominantly white.
Mm-hmm.
And this past year has made me really confront that, even me, I've been racist for sure in my life. Like, I've depended on um, my white identity to move through the world more easily. And that's race. That's, denying part of my
Yeah.
who I am to move, to easily navigate through the world is a part of racism. It's so when I'm saying, like, America needs to do some reassessment, and
Yeah.
I'm saying that's, if you grew up in this society, no matter what race you are, what sexuality you are, what
Mm-hmm.
gender you are, we've all been affected by the society in some way. And it's
Yes.
kind of time to, we've reached this point where it seems like in order for us to truly all move forward, we have to deal with the social part of our country,
Right.
the good and the bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the main key point is basically, acceptance,
Yeah.
acknowledging, accepting that, okay, this is what it is. And, actually, you know what, just to kind of follow up on some of your points. So during your self-reflection, for you, like, besides obviously confronting not just like you yourself, your own race, but what other discoveries have you made during your self-reflection?
Apart from the race
Yeah.
part of things. Um, well, I mean, like, how personal do we want to get? There's been some personal things with, like, how my brain works.
Well, that's what we're here for, right? That's what
Okay,
we're here
okay.
for.
I've discovered that I get in my own way a lot.
Okay.
Um, that I've through the years built up these devices, these coping mechanisms that I guess helped me at some point in my life. I'm turning 35 this year, so when I was a teenager, maybe that helped me, but they've kind of stayed, and I've still kind
Mm,
of fallen in these traps as I got older. Um, that this past year has allowed me the time to look and reflect and go, wait a minute, I'm not achieving some things that I've wanted to achieve in my life. Why haven't I achieved those things? And I've realized that a lot of it is me just getting in my way, whether it's tearing my self-esteem down, um, or making excuses for certain things, relying on certain parts of my personality that worked when I was younger, but that's not working anymore.
yeah.
Um, because I've gotten older and I'm in a different place in my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been this real kind of realignment, I guess. It's kind of like I've taken a breath, I've
Mhm.
sat down, I've been meditating a lot, I've
Oh,
been looking
nice.
at my life objectively and going, okay, this isn't working, this is working, and trying to kind of, I don't know, almost rebuild myself. And the pandemic, even though it's been horrible in many ways, that has been, and I know this is a lot of people have experienced this, is
Sure.
it's also been good because it's allowed me to get off the hamster wheel, um, and take stock and reassess.
And because I mean, I'm sure the reason why you do certain things when you're younger is because you were probably putting, well, not just putting a lot of pressure on yourself, right? But my guess is probably there's some kind of societal pressure that you feel like's being put on you in a way, right?
Sure. I mean, you get pressures from everywhere, right? You get
That's
pressure
true.
from society, you get pressures from your family,
Yeah.
your friends. I mean, but they're all obviously connected to the larger society from media. So, yeah, exactly. It's, I looked at, I was trying to really go through and not just realize these little, um, these little defensive mechanisms that
Mhm.
I have,
Mhm.
and what's working and what isn't, but where they actually come from too. Like doing the deep dive and going like,
Oh.
yeah, like why do I do that? Yes, I
Mm.
now I can point that out and go, yes, I do this one thing
Mhm.
that gets in my way, but where did that come from? Did I naturally have that? Do I
Yeah.
remember that always being there? Is this was always my response in this situation,
Mhm.
um, or did that come up for from some other
Mhm.
reason? To me, I know that helps me
Okay.
kind of break it apart and go, oh, okay. If I can point to where the genesis of that issue comes from, then I can go, okay, I can get rid of it. It doesn't have as much power anymore.
Okay. And let me ask you, like, what's one specific response that it always comes up for you?
Um, I This is what I'm currently kind of working on.
Okay.
I don't finish things. I am a big idea person, and I'm
Mhm.
like, and I know you are too.
Yeah.
And so I come up with these big, you know, I this creatively, scripts or um,
Plays, whatever. Right.
plays, whatever.
Yeah.
Politically, I get involved politically, and so
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, this is the way, but we need to move forward, and it's 'cause this. But I'll start something, and it's very hard for me to finish it before I set it aside because I get excited about my next big idea,
Mm.
and I started looking at like why. Okay, that I notice I do that,
Mhm.
so figuring out how to really just sit and accomplish even the smallest tasks is kind of how I started to retrain my brain.
Mhm.
So I'm going to sit down and, write one page today, even if it's a half a page,
Mhm.
and then figure out when I'm writing that one page of whatever it is, my script or whatever, I'll get an impulse to look at my phone, or I'll get an impulse to be like, oh, I'm kind of getting stuck in this one part, and then it's too hard or whatever it is, and I put it aside. I
Mhm.
find these other excuses. I'm hungry. I don't know, whatever it is,
Mm.
and
Mm.
I'll find a way to take me away from that moment,
Mhm.
and then I get caught up in life and leave it.
Interesting. Why is that you do that?
I think, and I'm still like doing the work on it,
Yeah.
but I think it's when I was really young, uh, I was very studious, and
Mm.
I actually did complete a lot. I always did my homework on my own. I didn't,
Yeah.
no one needed to tell me to do anything.
Mhm.
I was a little bit of a nerd, and yeah, I would have my homework would be done. I got A's on everything, and then through towards middle school, I had trouble at home. My parents got divorced, and blah blah blah. Um, and I started rebelling a bit against
Mhm.
the my the world around me,
Mhm.
and I think a part of my rebellion was that I realized that people were I felt pressure. I don't know if the pressure is the right word, but I was kind of like, well, you expect me to get good grades. You expect me to be the good child. I've done my part to be the good child, but I didn't feel like I was getting from the
Mm.
other people the adults in my life, that they weren't doing their part.
Mm.
So part of my rebellion was, well, then I'm just gonna not be a good student then. And I'm not gonna finish my
Mm.
chores, and I'm not gonna finish my homework.
Mm.
And I think that got ingrained in me. And I think, and again, still, I just never really had any uh, pressure to finish things, to see things through. It was never taught to me. I
Mhm.
had it naturally when I was younger, and then I just rewrote that code, I guess. I just got rid of it.
Mm.
I'm thinking that's kind of where, because I did do it, and then I did it,
Ah, okay.
and it never truly. I never, still haven't really gotten rid of it, and I don't know if it's like I need to go back and just. And for the most part, I have just like, okay, that happened in my life, and I
Yeah.
need to move on from that, uh, and grow up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's where it comes from. Was a rebellious thing, and it just stuck.
Mm.
And I think until I completely am um, okay with my past and put that to rest,
Mhm.
then I can maybe go, okay, now I can finish whatever I want to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't have to be a rebellious kid anymore,
Right.
because, I'm a freaking adult.
Yeah, yeah. You're grown up. You set your own schedule, your own deadlines.
Right. Which, is hard in itself. But I think when it's something that just became a part of my subconscious.
Hmm.
And I think it must have benefited me, because I it forced me to it did open my mind in some ways. I was, like I said, I was just like a book nerd. I just read all
Yeah,
day and did my homework. I you
yeah.
know I hardly had any friends. My mind was just in
Mhm.
reading
Yeah.
and studying. So I think it benefited me in getting friends and broadening my horizons and trying different things. I was quite
Mhm.
a timid child, and then
Mhm.
I wasn't. Um, because I was just like hopping to here and, oh, what about this? What about this thing? What about music? What about movies? What about, traveling? Oh yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of one of the big things that I've been working on and figuring out, that to try to better myself, that COVID has allowed me the
Mhm.
time to do.
Okay, so have you I wouldn't say successfully, but have you start to develop some kind of like routine then to kind of work on that?
Yeah. So um, again, like I said, I meditate a lot, and so I've been trying to meditate. I've kind of dwindled it down to even the smallest things. So even when I'm meditating, if I have the impulse to stop, I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Mhm.
I try to sit there a little bit longer and
Oh,
push
okay.
that a little bit further, and
Okay.
just like hone in my focus a little bit more. That's like one easy way that I can retrain my brain to do that.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, you know, what I'm writing a script right now, and it's, even if it's just like, okay, I have to finish this, half of this
Yeah.
episode
Yeah.
by the end of this week. And so I
Mhm.
break it down into days. Like
Mm.
today I'm doing these 2 pages,
Mhm.
and I just force myself to sit there and finish those 2 pages. I block everything out. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
this time is what I'm doing.
Mhm.
So, and it's been really hard. I would say I've only started really doing that the past few months. As you know, I started fostering my
Yeah.
husband and I started fostering a little baby at the
Yeah.
beginning of uh, the pandemic.
Yeah.
Um, and so, you know, most of the year has been being a new dad,
Yeah.
and,
Of
which
course.
is also has been extremely good for self-reflection
Mhm.
and, uh, you know, testing my
Yeah.
who I am and what I'm capable of.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also training your discipline too, because
Absolutely.
you got to wake up obviously a certain time or do certain things for the baby because that's part of being a parent too.
Gotta do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just go like, oh, I'm just gonna do this other thing and then I'll feed the baby. But it's like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if the baby's hungry, and that's the time to eat, then
Gotta do it.
you got to do it. You know, no, that's good. That's good. That's uh, actually the one thing though too is I don't know if this is part of your process of retraining your brain, but because there was this one post on Instagram, it was Andy Warhol's like one of his quotes, right? You're
Mhm.
saying that like you're trying to constantly remind yourself the two words like so what. Um, so I want to know if that's part of your kind of retraining your brain thing that you do too, you know, reminding yourself so what.
So what in as far as like, so what, it all doesn't matter, or so what are you going to do next kind of thing, or
Well, so see, so that Instagram post, I don't even know because actually I think you reposted it. I don't even
did
know.
I? I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
even know the reference.
You don't even know the reference. I don't remember what you posted up.
It was Andy Warhol.
Yeah, let me look it up because I actually saved it. I thought it was pretty cool.
And this is where the edit comes in.
Yeah. So because Andy Warhol is saying that sometimes people let the same problem make them miserable for years when they could just say, "So what? My mother didn't love me. So what?"
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So let's
Yeah.
talk about that.
Okay. Yes. So, so what? Yes, exactly. So I think what I take from that is, yeah, so what? Move on. That has been a big part of, um, the retraining of my brain
Hmm.
is, uh, yeah, so what, these things happen to you. That you can't, my emotions are getting hung up on those things when, yes, they are, everyone's experience is valid, and you have every right to mourn or go through whatever you've been through.
Yeah.
um but I just got tired of letting it define me, and it wasn't I didn't even go through anything super horrific, like, it's also that realization of a lot of people have moved on with their lives and been through a lot
Yeah.
more than I have. Yeah, you kind of, I got to a point where it's like, so what, I'm here now,
Yeah.
and I'm the only one that really, for the most part, chooses what my life will be in the future.
Right.
At least the things that I can control.
Hmm.
And so it's kind of letting go of all of the things, that realizing what has been controlling me, and letting those things go and saying so what to them,
Yeah.
and kind of redefining who I am now.
Yeah. Like basically, like, you know, if you don't have a certain achievement at this age, like, you know, whatever, who cares? You know, not everyone has at this age, or some
Right.
people never have, and is, you know, so I think that's a good way to sort of give yourself, I guess, less, not just less pressure, but actually less anxiety, because I feel like those things kind of, you know, for me, sometimes it creeps up too. It gives you the anxiety, right? Because you, well, because, you know, you mentioned that you're 35, and I'm 36. I'm going to turn 37 soon. So, you know, from a traditional Asian family, when I think about like, oh, well, I'm like this age, but I'm still not married yet. I don't have kids. You know,
Mhm.
in a traditional Asian household, that's like literally out of the norm.
Right.
And maybe that's for you too as well.
Yeah.
Um, but and then so I think telling yourself so what probably really helps, because then I wouldn't have to be like, fine, I'm not married yet at this age. Whatever, fuck it. You know, I'll just find other things to do. You know.
Right. I think, yeah, the whole age thing, ageism, or what
Yeah.
you're supposed to have done by a certain age,
Yeah.
is really bullshit, really.
Okay.
um,
What's your point of view on that?
exactly. It's bullshit. No, I mean, I say that. I still feel it at times. I still go. I still have panic attacks. So I'm like, I'm 35 and I haven't done X, Y, and Z that society says I should be
Yeah.
doing, and that I told myself I would do.
Yeah. Well, we
Uh,
all do. We all do.
right. Instead of also looking at the things that I have accomplished and
True.
how far I've come. I come from a very poor Appalachian, uh, you know, background, and
Mhm.
not many people get out of that situation.
Oh, okay.
So, like how, just how disenfranchised and poor that area is and that society is. A lot of people get stuck in that.
Oh, so it's like in the movies where the people who are from there usually they do get stuck there. Like there's no
Yeah.
way. Oh, wow.
No, I shouldn't paint. I'm painting a broad brush now. Now, look,
Okay.
I mean, some people want to stay there and
Okay.
have, thriving lives and very fulfilled lives there,
Sure.
um, and do great things. But a lot of people are feel like they're stuck there because there aren't
Mm,
many opportunities that are coming
mm,
from that part
yeah,
of the world in Appalachia. So not many job opportunities,
of course.
education isn't great. There's just not a lot of investment into the culture and society there.
Okay.
So instead, I should be looking back at my life and be like, wow, I am doing the things I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
I've traveled the world. I'm in a creative field that I wanted to be in. You know, I'm open, and have, a beautiful, loving relationship
Yeah.
with my husband. And I think it's a lot easier to look at the negative things and go, well, but okay, yes, I've done these things that, you know, a lot of people from where I'm from may look at and be like, wow, he did those, accomplished those things and he got out. But I'm always looking at, well, I'm turning 35 and I didn't do
Yeah.
this and this that I
Mhm,
said I was going to do.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
when I
You're
realized, like, I have my whole, like, hopefully I
yeah.
have many more years. Uh, I might have 60 more years of
Yeah.
my life to accomplish things.
That's true. It's funny because lately I've been, well, of course, like everyone else, I've been reading a lot too, during the pandemic period and even now. So the one book that I've been reading right now is called Late Bloomers. Um, it's the author's name is Rich Carlgard.
Rich
But
Carl.
yeah, I'll probably I can send that to you if you're interested.
Okay.
But the whole the whole book is actually very interesting because it literally it goes into like the science of why some people bloom much later than others,
Mm.
and he would, because this person, like this writer, he does a lot of not just research, but he'll talk to a lot of psychologists and neuroscientists and kind of trying to figure out like, okay, if you're a late bloomer, basically his argument is that usually late bloomers have a better long-term success and happiness life than someone who has bloom early. So he makes all these different cases and arguments, which is actually very fascinating because um like one of the famous case that he brings up is J.K. Rowling. She, supposedly she didn't really hit it off with, obviously the whole Harry Potter series. Didn't really hit it off until she's when in her 50s because like she was had all this other stuff going on in her
Mm.
life. And then not just her, right? But just all these other different like
Oh,
iconic.
Cicely Tyson, the actress who just passed away, she didn't get her first co-star role on TV until she was 39 or 40 or
Yeah.
something like that. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. So I agree with you that the whole age thing it is such bullshit because I think the problem with that is well, now with social media they always highlight
right.
the young like wonder kind, like, oh, this guy's 20 years old, he's already like, you know killing it, right?
Right.
Making millions, whatever. And then so that makes everyone else feel bad.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're constantly doing. We're comparing ourselves to those kind of really unrealistic kind of level. But then when we step back, we realize like, well, just like what you said, there's a lot of people who didn't really truly suppose, I guess you can say, make it until like a really late age. And hey, who cares? I mean,
Cares,
they're
yeah.
still doing well. I mean, whether they're in their 40s or 50s. I mean, like what you said, the point is like, if you're able to do well in other areas, who cares if it comes early or comes late?
Exactly. And I think, um, what was the book that you were reading?
Late bloomers.
Late bloomers. So have you heard of, it's so funny that you say this, because have you ever heard of the children's book, Leo the Late Bloomer?
No, I have not. What about it?
Okay, so it's one of my favorite children books.
Okay.
I think when I was in second grade, the teacher read it to us. It's about this lion who's just like not really in step with the rest of everybody else,
Okay.
and then by the end of the book, he finds himself, he grows into himself, and he's happy and whatever.
Okay.
Um, After the teacher read that for the first time, I instantly, as a second grader or third grader, whatever it was, I was like, that's me. Even I remember the room I was in. I remember, like, it was so, I just thought, yeah, that's me. I'm Leo the Late Bloomer. As
Mm,
like an 8-year-old thinking that. I
mm.
just thought, like, it takes me a while to get my footing and traction, and then I get it.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so I really want to read this book that you're talking about, because I completely identify with that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'll text it to you. Yeah, I randomly picked up at a bookstore because I was just looking for a new book to read, and then I saw the title. I was like, hey, I kind of relate to that too because you know, I mean, the thing is, of course, no one knows or can predict if you can achieve anything great even at a later age. I mean, some people maybe I never do, but that's besides the point because like what you said before, wealth and success and all that, or even equalities, is relative to each person's. Everyone's is
Right.
different, right? Definition different. So
And also, I think we're in, again, going back to a couple of things, going back to like where we start off of, where we
yeah,
start from
yeah,
is always very different.
yeah,
And we all don't start off on the same foot. And what we value, like, our culture tells us that we should be valuing success as wealth, as fame, or whatever,
yeah,
instead of taking a step back and looking at, okay, what would be good for me? If
yeah,
I got famous and wealthy when I was 20, I might not be here. Right? Like, I was not ready. I did not have the coping mechanisms to, I'm a
uh,
late bloomer. Like, I was, yeah. So, and also, as you get older, you realize that's all bullshit anyway.
sure,
And that's not, really, being financially comfortable is really what I want to be. That's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
uber wealthy, and
yeah,
that would be, I would take it,
hmm,
but it's not like this goal of mine that
yeah.
I have to get to.
Well, actually, hold on. I'll show you the title of the book. I'll show you the cover. So just for the ones listening, I'm showing Tim the late bloomers book that I'm talking about. Look at that. The
Oh yeah,
cover is actually pretty cool. It has like the turtle
turtle
in
ahead
the
of
air.
the rabbit. Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm definitely gonna check that out.
that hotel where it's funny too because that story actually is kind of almost related because the story is like the rabbit got cocky, so he's like, oh,
Yeah,
I'm just gonna take a nap and then
yeah. That
eventually.
was also one of my favorite.
Oh
Maybe,
yeah, me too.
yeah. Really, the rabbit and the hare,
Yeah,
or
I like that.
the
I
hare and
love
the
that
tortoise,
story.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that story.
Yeah, I wonder if I made myself this way, though, if I always got attached to
Mm,
the Leo the Late Bloomer, the tortoise and the hare story. But I didn't, my family, like I said, I was kind of the opposite of you. I had no pressure.
okay.
I had no, they were just like, whatever you do is great.
Oh
Like,
wow.
um which on one hand was was awesome, because I didn't feel like I needed to live up to anyone
Hmm.
or be anyone else. Um, but at the same time, without having that some sort of pressure
Hmm.
or expectation, I think as a kid, I think kids need that. They need some sort of structure,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
else you're flailing. You're just like,
yeah.
where do I fit
What do you?
in, or
Yeah.
where am I going? What am I doing? And I think I still suffer from that.
Mhm.
It's still hard for me to center myself and go, okay, who am I and where am I going?
So there is actually a possibility that maybe you may be an early bloomer, but because you're lacking the structure, or maybe you're just slacking, then you just kind of identify yourself with something else.
Maybe. I don't know. Still doing the work, still figuring it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's this weird balance, you know, and now we're fostering this baby, and it's forced me to really look at what kind of parent I want to be, and
Mhm.
what I want to instill into my children.
Yeah.
My partner, he had a very structured life.
Mhm.
I don't think, I mean, obviously everyone does comparing, and you know, I'm sure
Yeah.
that that's across the board, but I don't think he had a very like strict, or you have to be just like so and so's
Yeah.
kid, or
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he had a pretty healthy, balanced upbringing, and with structure. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out as a parent, what I want to instill in my children is giving them the structure to allow them to blossom and
Mhm.
be who they are,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
put the guide rails on in some way.
Right. Right. Like you want to do that until like you figure out, okay, this is the right time to take them off, and then kind of let them go.
Let
So it's
them
almost,
go.
it's like bowling, right? Like once they
Yeah,
understand the fundamentals, then it's like, okay, now you can do it with the gutters and see what you can
yeah,
do, right?
yeah. And if you know, if you get in the gutter once, it's okay. You get another chance,
Yeah.
as long as it's not too extreme. But
Yeah. No, no, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the funny thing, because our brains, our minds just work that way, where we always make everything a bigger deal than it really is, if you
yes,
really investigate, right? Because like what you just said, let's say if your first you bowl first time and then you get a gutter first time, like what you said, you have another chance, you have another opportunity to learn from it and be like, oh, maybe I should not spin the ball this way, or whatever. um but we don't tend to think of it that way, which is kind
yeah.
of
It's like
strange.
all or nothing, and especially I think in our culture now, where everything's
Yeah.
instant gratification and you just quickly move on.
Yeah.
I think that can trickle down into, I mess up this one time, I'm not doing something right. It's
Yeah.
it. Like it's moved on. My
Yeah.
chance is done.
Yeah.
When it's just really not. That's just not the case.
It's true. I mean, well, I'm still like that too sometimes, as I'm trying to do the thing where you're trying to do, is just retraining my brain to think something else. Because I always do the same thing where, like, oh, let's say with social media, I'll like look at other people. It's like, what are they doing right? How they get so many followers? And then when I look at their content or whatever, you're just thinking in your head, like, what, is it really that good? I mean, so you always think to yourself, like, what kind of secret tips do they have, right?
Mhm.
And it's funny too, because a lot of times most people will tell you that there really isn't no formula or tips to anything. It's just sometimes, maybe some people just by chance, or you could say by luck too, maybe a little bit of that. It just kind of happens, right? And I'm like, okay, well, maybe if I think of it that way, then it's easier to swallow, like an easier pill to swallow, maybe.
Also, like, why are we looking at people's followers
But that's
and
true too. That's true.
like gratification, or putting them on a pedestal because they have so many like it truly, social media has, although there are great aspects
Yes.
to it, and it is a great vessel for
Yes.
knowledge and realizing what's going on in the world, it also is like a cesspool it, of high school. It's
Yes.
like, like the popular kid, this
Yeah.
person is,
Yeah.
the popular kid in high school, and everyone's looking up to them because they
Yeah.
have so many followers, quote unquote. But
Yeah.
like, why do they have those followers? Does it really matter?
Yeah.
Like, does that why are we again comparing ourselves to
Yeah.
images on Instagram and the numbers attached to those images? Like, it 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 just doesn't.
Yeah.
We all do it. I do it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I have to. I've had to force myself to, like,
Yeah.
I go on Instagram now. I've gotten rid of my Facebook.
Mhm.
I only have Instagram. I go on Instagram. I go to see who's messaged me.
Yeah.
I allow myself like 3 scrolls of, like,
Mhm.
just to see if, and I
Yeah.
really truly only follow mostly people within the industry, entertainment industry, and my friends that I know,
Yeah.
and kind of get quick updates, and then I have to, if I'm disciplined enough that day, I turn it off and I'm like, okay, that was it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And no, I'm trying really hard to do that too as well. And then, part of it too is because, I mean, at the end of the day, to be honest, we're all still a child at heart. I mean, this is something that, I mean, I think Neil Gaiman was saying too in one of his books or whatever. I mean, he was just kind of, I mean, of course I'm paraphrasing, I don't know the exact quote, but something where like, we're kind of, it's almost like we're all children wrapped in an adult body or something like that.
Yeah. And I completely, like, look, I'm still hung up on stuff that that I got when I was a kid,
Yeah.
So I think part of growing up and maturing is realizing that you're still a kid.
Yeah.
And once you have that realization, you can go, okay, these are the good things I want to keep as my kid, and these are the things I want to get rid of because I'm an adult.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think when, that's really helped me. Having a baby has really highlighted that for me, is like, I really want to be as good of a role model for this kid as I can.
Yeah.
And what does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
And I do think it's a balance, just like everything in life. It's
of course
keeping the good parts of being a kid, while showing them this is how to be an adult.
Yep. That's great. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, that's good. That's good. You never want to be one of those, I guess you can say, hypocritical parents, right? Tell them not to do one thing and then you do it anyways,
Right. Or, just it's forced me to look at all of the, it is, that's stupid. It's having a kid's holding up a mirror to you, to yourself or whatever. But it's true. It is. It's when this kid is crying nonstop and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Just, I need 2 seconds to breathe. You really find out who you are in those moments, how you react to certain situations. When you have someone who doesn't speak your language, can't even speak yet, their brain isn't even formed yet.
Yeah.
You have to conform yourself to go, into their world.
Yeah.
And it takes to do that in a healthy, positive way. You have to know yourself a bit, and know your limitations, and know to step outside of yourself a bit.
That's great, man. I love the progress you're making. I love this self-reflection. I think everyone really should go that path like you do too. And then now to follow up on that as the last question before we wrap it up. So right now, after all the self-discovery, self-reflection, what is your priority project you're trying to finish right now?
My priority project, like with myself, or anything?
Anything. But your number one that you want to finish for sure, not do the whole thing where like I'm gonna go and do something else.
Oh yes, okay, yeah, sticking to my guns. Well, I've been working on a script for over a year now, and I'm getting close to finishing it, and I just need to finish that.
Okay, it's a feature film.
No, it's a series.
Okay.
And so I'm really close to it. I keep going back. I'm at that stage where now I'm like, no, it's not finished. I'm going to go back and do this and tweak. But yeah, that's the big thing that my big project that I want to finish.
Okay.
I will finish.
Okay. Do you give yourself a deadline for that?
Yeah. By the summer. So I'm moving. Well, we could talk about this after.
Yeah. We'll talk offline. That's fine. We'll talk offline. Okay, cool.
By summer, I want to.
Okay.
I'm gonna have it done. Yeah.
Okay, great. Sounds good, man. I love your approach now. I love your, rewiring of the brain and retraining it is great. yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk more next time. All the conversations I've had has always been very, very great. I always want to have it longer, but we can't. So
Oh, good. Thanks. Sorry, I'm a bit.
all good.
My conversation is a bit scattered and not very precise. I hope it plays out okay. But
It's good. It's good. Don't worry about it. And yeah, and of course, thank you all for whoever's listening out there for tuning in. Everything you need to know will be in the description. And yeah, if you are a follower, you listen and you love the content, just keep listening, keep tuning in. We always have new episodes every week, with a new guest every week, new tea as well. So, but thank you all. Thank you very much, and thank you, Tim, for joining us.
thanks for having me.
Until next time.